Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webcast. As you can see, this is a webcast by AI Media. The title is Breaking Language Barriers, Amplifying Your Reach. And our speakers are Bill McLaughlin, Chief Product Officer with AI Media, and Matt Mello, who is Vice President of Sales for the Americas. And I am Joel Welch. I'm your host for today. I do have some housekeeping I'd like to do. First of all, the SMPTE call for papers for the 2025 Media Technology Summit is open, and the deadline is 31st of May. You can scan that QR code. It'll be in the handout that we provide, but scan that QR code and submit your abstract. The program committee will go ahead and choose the abstracts that they think will tell the appropriate story for the program. I want to tell you a little bit about the SD 2110 intensive boot camp that's coming up. There is early bird pricing at the moment. The course itself is instructor-led and starts in June. The early bird pricing is temporary. It ends on the 3rd, as I said. Again, scan that QR code, get more information, or register. You want to save the date. 13th through the 16th of October is the SMPTE Media Technology Summit in Pasadena this year. So put it in your calendars and make sure you don't miss what is always an excellent, excellent technical program. Do you want to be part of the 2025 MTS Program Committee? You get to select the abstracts and work with the speakers to make sure that the papers do meet the needs and tell the story that needs to be told. So if you would, email education@simpte.org with a brief summary of your experience, and you can see up above there what they're looking for. You need to be an active SMPTE member and either a prior paper presenter or manuscript reviewer and familiar with peer review. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Matt and Bill to the floor. Hello, gentlemen. Hope you're doing well. And I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about what we're going to learn today.
Thanks, Joel. Really good to have us on, and I'm glad to be part of this SMPTE event. We're very excited to talk about LEXI Voice, which is our newest addition to our product suite. And basically, LEXI Voice is a way of adding translation in a live setting to existing broadcast-style workflows that lets you really open up who your audiences can be with your existing broadcast, which I think was resonated really strongly with our customers that already use us for captioning services and captioning and coding. Now they can take the existing feeds that they're already using and send them out to different places that English or other language might not be the native language where they want to broadcast. So we're very excited about this because this is something that our customers have been asking for. This is something that people have been looking to do for a long time and haven't had a really good, straightforward way of doing it. So that's what we're talking about today, and that's what we'll be introducing. So really, I think the biggest driver for us is that we are looking to make your content as accessible as possible to as many regions as possible, while fitting into the native program language that's being the native language that's being spoken in the place where it's being broadcast. As you can see there, 80% of global content is inaccessible to non-native speakers. There's so much broadcast content being put out there these days. There's so many new things coming out. And people are always asking, how can I make the most of what I am doing with my existing content? I'm already producing it. It's already going out to air. How can I actually take that and now put it into a market where I can actually monetize the fact that I'm putting it in a new market and provide the correct language in that service? So LEXI Voice is effectively, in addition to the EEG, AI Media, ICAP ecosystem that we've been building for the last many years, and this is a natural fit into that product suite. So by adding the ability to do live translation in that workflow, you're now opening up the market capabilities tremendously. We have tons of support for different languages. So you can say, well, let's say you're an English news broadcaster and you wanted to put your broadcast into Spanish or French, completely possible now, all by just using the existing broadcast tools you're already using, and at a very low cost and at low operational overhead. So the problem was really that this was very difficult to do at any sort of scale before, right? Without the use of AI, without the use of automation tools, it was possible to add live translations into an existing workflow, but it was going to be probably the number one thing is cost, right? It's going to be extremely expensive to have a human interpreter do this, or to set up an entirely separate studio to have somebody doing a live narration of the broadcast in different languages. Very costly, not scalable. So there's been a problem of how do I actually get this to a new audience that's been lingering for some time now. And there really hasn't been a good solution, especially in the live space, which is where EEG AI media have always focused, is in live captioning and subtitling. Now we can expand that into live translation with voice as well. So Bill and I are going to kind of go over the differences that this can add to your workflow from a technical perspective and also for an operational and monetization standpoint. So our solution to this is called LEXI Voice. We have a product toolkit called LEXI that is effectively how you add different layers of captioning and translation, audio description, and AI coming very soon as well into a broadcast or streaming style workflow. That's really what we do, and that's why this product is so exciting for us, is because it's just really such a natural fit into what we already do and where we specialize. And I'll toss it over to Bill for this slide.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, a great introduction. Historically, AI Media has had service divisions that were doing localization in Australia, in the Americas, and around the world in a variety of languages. And we know the power of delivering content across languages and borders from the world of Hollywood blockbusters and streaming series. We're used to, when we look at a menu on a streaming service, that the same content might have audio tracks that are available in 5 or 10 or 20 or more languages. And that's being done because that's a great way to reach audiences, that you really can take the same pieces of popular content and get a multiplicative audience by translating them out of the original language. There have even been major worldwide hits from languages like Korean shows that are not one of the traditional, something like English, where we think of as so much blockbuster content coming from. So the world's content is becoming a lot more global, and that's something that we see in localization of serialized movies, post-production workflows, really. And because there's such a massive ability to monetize the content, there's also a really big budget for this. And, it's done right. So there will be a script written. The script will be, kind of really carefully edited and translated. There will be voice actors that are hired, often voice actors who have experience with similar types of content, who may even be the same actors that in a certain country and language have done the same actor before. And that's the kind of thing that's being done. And I mention that mostly to point out just how much money there is to be made for the content studios in localizing this content effectively. In live, you've always had a little bit of a different ballgame, because in live, maybe no single piece of content, whether that be a game or a newscast or a webinar, is quite as massive as something like a film blockbuster in terms of budget and distribution and preparation time. But there are still very large events and very small events that could benefit proportionally from having a true localized presentation in another language. We've been doing that with translated captions for many years. Now we're moving on to the next stage of doing that with an actual live voice. And the audience response hearing the voice as opposed to hearing a translated caption or reading a translated caption is transformational. We see a very different response, even just in basic pilots, of seeing translated voice compared to translated text. So it can be a game changer for these audiences. Traditionally, when you've tried to use a human workflow to do live dubbing, it's either been one of two approaches, either a simultaneous interpreting approach, which is what you're picturing if you picture, for example, the United Nations, where a speaker will speak and an interpreter will listen. They'll wait for a full phrase to be delivered, a full sentence or paragraph or idea that's complete. They'll paraphrase it and transform it into another language, and they'll deliver that. They're going to be a little bit behind in terms of how long it takes them to compose, to paraphrase, and to hear the speaker's meaning to make sure they've understood it correctly. It's going to be a very good presentation in general if you have a professional interpreter. It is a very expensive workflow. It is a workflow that introduces a significant amount of audio delay, and what you are hearing, for better or for worse, is a sort of a paraphrase. The alternative that's widely used in something like a sports broadcast would be alternative language commentary. When something like the Olympics is broadcast in many languages, each language will have its own vocal booth, and those commentators will deliver original commentary based on their knowledge of the sport and the event, and they won't really be saying exactly the same thing at the same time. They'll all be giving a set of references and history and narration that fits in with what's happening in the event and phrasing it in their own way. That can also be a very excellent workflow, but then it requires expert commentators in each language, and each of the booths will be giving a very separate presentation. So, for example, you wouldn't really be hearing some kind of translation of an iconic announcer in another language. You would be hearing a different announcer presentation geared for your language. So as we've tried to move this into AI, because of course AI media is probably best known for really transforming the live captioning workflow and transforming it into something that's now increasingly done through a pure AI, pure automated, no human in the loop workflow, and that's been very successful for verbatim captions and subtitles in the first language. And we're looking to move that approach with more of our customers into the world of translation. And in doing that, to move the use case for these products and the benefits for these products for our customers beyond accessibility and compliance into much more massive audience expansion. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have a high quality translation through AI. And that's something where the state of the art has been advancing really dramatically in the past couple of years. Everyone has probably seen demos from OpenAI, Google, and other companies showing how effectively in near real time you can translate someone who's speaking to you, for example, in a tourist situation or in a medical situation. And that's something that's being used effectively now professionally in a lot of fields. We're looking to bring that to media. And there's a lot of complexities when you translate between the world's languages. They're not all the same. They don't use the same idioms. That's something that needs to be managed. They'll have different conventions in terms of whether verbs are used with gender and different tenses. It's not just that it's not as simple as there being only a different word for everything. There's a different structure, and that affects how you need to translate languages, especially in real time. It affects what kind of delay you can do it with, and it affects how accurately you can do it based on contextual understanding of the situation. Do you also need to see the video to see the gender of the speaker? These kinds of things can be very important questions depending on your destination language. So my team has been studying all these issues for probably 2 or 3 years now, pretty intensively. And although not everything is totally solved, we have come out with a product that was released at the NAB show on April 7th. We saw an amazing reaction at the show. And this product is now ready to go. And Matt's going to lead you through a couple of examples of newscast style footage and how well that can work in a variety of languages. And it's something that we saw people's eyes light up at the show. I'm excited to bring it to more of an audience here because I think this is a technology that's really ready to close the gap between what you can do to localize a live broadcast compared to the kinds of things that we see in the Hollywood blockbusters on the streaming episodic services. I think live content is ready now to join that party.
Yeah, those are great points, Bill, and everything here that you see on the slide now is speaking to what you've been saying about, we're providing high quality translations. We're always working on the best ways to include the latest technologies into this service so that you're getting the best possible product at the end. So basically, we're packaging, we're working with partners, we're making sure we're always on top of what is the latest service that we can use for whether that's translation, whether that's the same language captions, whether that's AD services, whether that's AI. We're always packaging that into the cleanest broadcast or streaming style workflows, and that's our specialty there. I wanted to call out to Joel too. I think we had a question from the audience too that we might be able to answer here.
We do indeed, and the question is from an anonymous attendee. The question is, we still do quite a few webinars and even virtual events that are pre-recorded and then sent out for translation into between 6 to 10 different languages. Is this something that we would be able to implement for future events?
Yeah, I mean, so from our perspective on LEXI Voice, yes, but you'd actually take it a step earlier in that process, and you can do the webinars live with the additional languages embedded as part of the actual webinar itself, and then as pre-recorded, you can reuse that for your post-production viewing as well. So yes, definitely. I think what's exciting from our perspective is you don't have to wait until the video has been recorded to actually then put it out into these different languages. So that's what's really exciting and new here for us.
And how you deliver those audio tracks to another set, to your end audience can depend a lot on the platform. We'll go into that a little bit later in the webinar about what kind of workflows we've been focused on, but it's something that I think as this capability comes up, hopefully more and more of the types of platforms that the questioner might use will actually be able to support live simultaneous audio.
And just the last thing to highlight on this slide too, before we jump into the demo videos, is that we are integrating, and I think Bill touched on this already, but we are integrating this into existing broadcast style workflows too. So to call out, this will fit into an SDI encoder that you may be already using for closed captioning, or transport stream, or 2110. We're supporting all the major broadcast formats, and we'll continue to as new ones come out and are developed and become popularized. We're always going to be in that style of workflow. So this is just a simple addition. If you're doing captioning, if you're doing translation, if you're looking to do add-on voice, this is the simplest way to do that by far. So that's the highlight there. And then Joel, I might pass to you to play out our demo videos also.
Les Pays-Bas sont en fête. S'il y a une équipe qui réussit à battre l'équipe des États-Unis du côté des femmes, il s'agit des Lions d'Orange. Ils sont les champions en titre et sont venus ici pour essayer de faire la passe de 2 d'or d'affilée. Les Américains qui ont remporté la dernière fois, l'équipe USA ont gagné l'or la dernière fois. C'était à Rio en 2016. Mais Tokyo était tout pour les Néerlandais, qui se sont battus pour remporter cette victoire, et oui. Les États-Unis
So
semblent
we could
mettre en passe de
probably
causer
pause
un
that one
bouleversement
there
majeur aux
just to
Américains qui
talk about
voudraient.
what we're seeing here live, is that this is a pre-recorded example, but this is exactly the style of workflow that we would do. Is for this example, the announcer is talking in English. He's talking about the Paris Games. They're broadcasting this in France, and they want to be able to put this into French so that the native audience can understand it. This is exactly the perfect use case for LEXI Voice. So this is a very good example of where you would make this application work very well. And you can see here too, we've included the English text and the French text as well. These are all services that we're providing all in a simple and straightforward package that you basically can push a button and have your captions, translated captions, and your voice all in one. And then we have another video that's going to also show you going from Korean audio into English language.
Including using ground firefighting teams at night. And today, the news of rain in Uiseong, Jeongbuk, Korea, was the center of attention. I was connected to the Andong site a while ago and listened to it, but I don't think it helped much. That's right, the head of the Forest Service said this at a briefing this evening. While the rain in some areas has not extinguished the main fire, it has reduced the likelihood of the wildfire spreading or igniting in other areas, they said. So that was helpful? Yes, it is. It's not that it didn't help, but the amount of rain that fell was a bit disappointing. Unfortunately, we're not hearing about a lot of rain tomorrow. According to the
Thanks, Joel.
Korea Meteorological Administration.
So you can see the power in that we, even if it's not a 100% accurate translation by all definitions, it is absolutely, you're able to understand the context very, very well, which is extremely powerful. The fact that the technology we're packaging into this can do this level of being able to, watch a Korean broadcast and actually understand what's being said was either very difficult or impossible to do before LEXI Voice. So we're very excited about this. This is a massive moment for us as a company. It's changing us from being like in a regulatory and being limited to closed captioning into this area where our partners can actually now monetize their content in a new way that they weren't able to before. Again, so that Korean broadcaster could now easily put that production into the US just simply by adding LEXI Voice and adding the distribution chain to do so. So that's a very powerful tool. And then Bill, I might throw to you to just talk about some of the back-end technologies that we're using.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wow to me to see the Korean to English clip, because I know that some of the Asian to European languages have a higher degree of difficulty even than English to French, for example, because they're structurally more distinct. But you really can take a clip like that and understand it. So it provides a way to really get the audience for something immediately into a number of languages, and the translation quality is excellent considering. So how have we done this? We're going to go into a little bit more on that now. The best-in-class AIs and LLMs that we're partnering with is a pretty deep list, because it turns out that who are the best partners for the different language translation and voicing components can depend a lot on the language and the application that you're going for. We have deals with 11 Labs, DeepL, Google, Speechmatics, OpenAI, and others. Some of the partners that we're starting to demonstrate are partners specializing in specific languages like Arabic or Korean that are a little bit less widespread in terms of AI availability, and that it really helps to have a local partner who knows the different local dialects and nuances and can provide voicing that's effective for all of them. Having the quality translation then is something that we need to process through the rest of the live production workflow. And that includes taking segments that are going to be as short as possible to minimize delay, but that are going to be long enough to maximize context and to account for the fact that different languages have different word order and sentence structure. We use that for captioning and for translation, and are then able to resynchronize with the audio going out, including using automated mixing and automated removal of the original source voice so that you can re-merge the spoken track to the original background track. What you wind up with is a very immersive performance, and you have a couple of options for synchronization. The synchronization could be allowed to float on the derived audio tracks a bit behind the original live tracks. Or what you could do is you can take the video, as we do with our CC Match feature, which is used for some captioning workflows, and you can delay the video enough so that when you lay back the new audio programs, they'll appear perfectly synchronized with the video, albeit a little bit later on a clock timeline. I hope that makes sense. We can answer some questions about that later, but we've seen that customers have been interested in doing a number of different options in terms of how synchronization works. we're getting very engaged into how to work in a broadcast customer or a streamer's workflow for live solutions. So that starts to go beyond issues that we inspect, like what is the quality of the translations, how smooth does the voice sound, does the voice reflect well the tone of the original media, and move more into exactly how are you going to use this great technology to actually reach an audience. And two of the questions we've seen so far have taught on that issue. Joel, if you wanna read, you said you had another question that I know was around the transport side. I think this slide kind of covers it. So basically, if we were running this LEXI Voice in our Alta product, which is currently very widely used for live captioning, live translated subtitles, and some other features, SCUDY 104, for example, in an MPEG transport stream, then you would put out the audio on new PIDs in the MPEG transport stream. So each language would be a different program with a different PID, and it could have its own mix, right? It could be a mono audio, it could be stereo or surround sound, depending on just what the bandwidth allocation was, what the original miking was, and what you had room to deliver to the end viewers. We also are currently supporting LEXI Voice in SDI workflows with our HD 492 flagship SDI closed captioning product. That can do closed captions, it can do translated subtitles, and it can now do voice into embedded audio tracks in SDI. In SDI, you have 16 tracks, regardless of how you're going to divide them into different languages or programs. So you may not have quite as much bandwidth to do anything you want to do in terms of, say, you wouldn't be able to take 5 different languages, mix them all in surround sound, and put them all on a single SDI cable. However, you could use multiple SDIs as needed, or you could do all 5 languages if you reduced it to a stereo mix for the new languages. We're also supporting 2110. 2110 has some similarities with SDI in terms of the audio structure, but you can support with 211030 up to 64 different tracks. So that should provide room to do quite a few languages, even in a 5-1 mix.
And I'll jump in here to talk
Sure.
about some of the industries and some of the places where this will actually become, where we're planning this to become most successful pretty immediately. We've definitely seen a lot of interest from our sports broadcast customers. Think of all the big, 3-letter acronym names. We work with most of them already for closed captioning and some translation services. They've been very vocal about their need for this type of service to be able to do automatic translations because of the obvious use case of sending, let's say it's NBA, for example, they may want to send their broadcasts out to Europe and have it available in German and Spanish and Portuguese and French. That's completely possible now for them with LEXI Voice by just simply adding this as a service to something that they're already doing for captioning. So sports is definitely one of the biggest markets that's seen a lot of excitement around this. I was actually speaking with one of the regional sports networks here in the US yesterday about this and their potential POC. And they said on the call, yes, this is extremely exciting for us because we've been looking to monetize more wherever we can, which resonates with our message of where you would use this, right? So they're looking to take some baseball games that are broadcast in English and put them in Spanish so that they can immediately have a larger viewing base in the native language that's being that's spoken by the area where they're broadcasting to. So to be able to do that just by simply clicking a button, so something that they're already doing, extremely powerful, like I said before. And like what Bill was saying before with government too, right? You have all of these situations where people are sitting and already doing live translations, like the UN was a very good example, live translations, and there's someone sitting there speaking and essentially broadcasting it out. This is a very good effective replacement for that. as the technology continues to get better to the confidence levels where we have with humans in this space already. So government's definitely another big application. And then traditional news broadcast, very similar, right? If you are, let's say you're a station in the U.S. and you broadcast in English, and you want to be able to broadcast in Spanish too, because the areas where you're broadcasting to have a very large Spanish-speaking population. This is, again, very, very straightforward and simple way of adding live translations into that existing closed captioning workflow. And again, all the format support there is very important, right? So you can do this in SDI. You can, if you're moving to 2110, you can do this in 2110, all completely possible already. So very excited. We are looking, like I said, we are beginning POCs with some of our sports broadcast customers, but this is all shippable today. This is completely possible as is. So really to kind of to wrap it up, the most exciting thing for us is this is very naturally going to fit into many people's workflows. This is a natural extension of the conversation we're already having about closed captioning services. It's a natural extension of the technology that we're seeing broadcasters move towards in general, a sense of AI and adding services just by the growth of AI within the industry. So we're looking forward to continuing to be a major player in the AI space in general. This is definitely a step in the right direction for us, and definitely a way that we're going to continue growing, both as a company and with our partners who are, working with us for closed captioning services now, with LEXI and with human captioning and all of that. So again, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that you can monetize your content just simply by adding a service at a very low cost, at a very low latency. So there's no reason not to try this immediately. If you're already using us for any other services, this is simply, there's no additional infrastructure that you'll need if you're already using LEXI as a captioning service, for example. This is an extension of our existing product suite. So again, we are shipping POCs immediately. We are, this is a service that's available starting today. So if you do have any interest, we're very open to having that discussion with you and any of your customers if you're an integrator or a reseller. So yeah, I think if there's any other questions that we want to go through, it'd probably be a good time now.
We do have a few questions, actually more than just a few. So I'll ask a couple, unless you're at the end of your presentation. If you're not, I will ask a couple, and then we'll wait until the final slides, and we'll get to all of the remaining questions. You just need to let me know if you're at the end.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Very good. I am going to come back on screen. Oh, no. I didn't mean to scare anybody. We have a number of questions, actually. Bruce from LTN Global says, the audio out translation will be presented as separate PID. And then he followed up, in real time.
Correct. So as we discussed on the slide with the MPEG transport stream, we will insert a separate PID for each new language of audio coming out. So which PID is configured in your channel settings for the Alta program, the same way it would be if you were using a PID-based subtitle service, which in North America is not usually the case, but would be common in the rest of the world. So essentially you select what PIDs, they appear at that point in your PMTs and the tables essentially that say what's in the transport stream, and you would get new audio PIDs coming out with the mix options and the channel options selected and a new one for each language. So the bandwidth of the output stream then is slightly higher than the bandwidth of the input stream, unless there is already sufficient headroom in the stream that it can be used up and come out the same.
Terrific. Next question is from an anonymous attendee. Do you have some automation for big chunks of Vimeo training content? Often the selection of closed caption versus audio voiceover translation is around cost and EAS or ease of correction. Any options for crowdsourced corrections? How does it compare with EBU, Eurovox, or Caption Hub?
Yeah, so the product that we're using with LEXI Voice right now is actually a live product, so not exactly to the use case described in the question. I do believe that in our next release, in the next quarter or so, we're going to release some similar features into our LEXI Recorded platform, which is what's used for subtitles and translations for clips or pre-recorded content, right? So that's more of a Dropbox style workflow to answer the automation question. You can use something like an S3 bucket or an FTP to push something into your account with AI media, and we will push back into a specified delivery mechanism, whatever format that you've specified in your order metadata, or that's configured with your account. So there's a push automation that's available for the subtitles that would also be possible with voice. From the point of view of editing, it's an interesting question. I think inherently the subtitles are going to be somewhat more editable as a workflow. I mean, everyone knows that there's many tools to do that. You can change them in text. You can, once you've changed them, it's kind of instant. Obviously, you'd probably have a two-step process whenever you were trying to edit something that was dubbed with voice, because you would have to edit the script and then you would have to re-render the speaking. So that's a workflow that's that, to be honest, not really the focus of the current product release, but it's obviously something that when you're in the domain of working on something non-live, you have a lot more options to get it 100% to your satisfaction with the expenditure of a bit of extra time. And so that's something that the tools will reflect in that space.
Perfect. As a learning and development professional, I should have anticipated this next question. The anonymous attendee asked, "What is a PID?" I used the acronym without saying it out.
Yeah. On the spot, I think a PID is a PID, as I think it's a payload ID, but in an MPEG transport stream, all of the different data packets are labeled in terms of essentially what stream or service a particular data packet is in. So a typical presentation might include a video PID. It would include at least one audio PID, let's say an basic English language program if it's English media, and then it may include other PIDs and other payload IDs that could be included. Could be all kinds of things. There could be additional language audio tracks. There could be different mixes of the audio. There could be subtitles in different PID streams. There can be other forms of metadata that are associated with identifying the program, sending advertising triggers. So effectively within the MPEG transport stream, all of the data is divided into these substreams, sometimes called an elementary stream, and each elementary stream has its own PID. And I'm probably getting a little bit maybe too educational here, but then you have something called your program map table packet, which gets broadcast periodically throughout the time you're broadcasting the transport stream, and it's basically a map that shows you, it says, okay, here are the lists of PIDs by number you expect to see in this stream, and here's what each of them is. And so there are standardized identifiers that would tell you what language this service is in, what kind of data is in this service, what kind of decoder or codec you should use to read it. That's MPEG transport stream in 30 seconds.
Very good. And the attendee says, "Thank you very much." Let's see. Our friend Bruce has another question. What upgrade is necessary to enjoy this translation from LEXI 3.0?
Yeah, from our perspective, it's simply a firmware upgrade to whichever system you're already using. So if that's Alta, it'd be a firmware upgrade that we'd send you. If it's an HD 492, the SDI encoder, it's just a firmware upgrade that enables this. And then the service itself is hosted in the cloud, the same place where you would find Lexi or Translate. So it's in addition to all the services there. So really not much at all if you're already using any EEG, ICAP equipment in-house.
Thank you. Let's see. This is the last one so far, and usually when I say that, a couple pop in. So fingers crossed. Mark asks, can you show us the user interface of this? How would we connect to it?
We could probably show you the user interface.
On a dare right this moment. That hadn't been a planned part of the AV for this webinar, so I don't know. Can I talk about the user interface? I 100% can.
I can also set up some time with this person after the call to walk through the actual interface and talk through any of the pain points or anything like that. So more than happy to do that after this call.
To give an overview, the interface that you'll see is really split into two sections, and some of this is going to make a little more sense if you've used an AI media product recently for subtitles, because then you'll probably be able to picture easily what I'm talking about. But typically the customer has a local encoder, either SDI hardware or Alta, which can be a virtual machine or pure software container. And the local system sits in the user or customer's network, and it takes the full res video in and out, and it puts the full res output out, and then it communicates with a cloud-based system which does the AI to provide the subtitles. So there are some settings for LEXI Voice in both your local system and on the cloud. Basically, on the cloud, you set up what we call an instance, and it says things like, what is your source language? What is your destination language? What is your selection of speaking voice? What is your target delay for this? What is your all kinds of settings, right? Like, like everything for, how are we going to indicate speaker changes, all custom dictionaries and custom phonetic glossaries. So there's a large system on the cloud that mostly mimics what you see for our systems for subtitles, with just the extension of some additional settings specifically pertinent to the voice and the speaking. Then on your local system, you would be receiving this voice stream in real time from the AI, and you'll have a couple of extra settings that involve how that actually goes out into the broadcast chain. So for example, if it was an MPEG transport stream, what PIDs do I want to use to output voice? If it was 2110, what RTP multicast do I want to output voice on? If it was SDI, which SDI embedded audio tracks do I want to put this out on? And what kind of mix settings do I want to use? Do I want this to be in stereo? Do I want it to overlay over an existing track that's in the input that I can put the new voice over, or do I want to have just the isolated voice and we're either going to mix it manually downstream or mix it in some other system, or we're just going to, perhaps we're something like a conference where just having the speaking voice is what's required and we don't need to do a mix settings. So these are the kinds of settings that exist, and they're somewhat split between your local installation and between the cloud system. It's not as complicated as all that, though, really. If you had the basic system for subtitling and translation, there's really just a few extra boxes for LEXI Voice.
We have a couple more questions from Anonymous. The first one is, for the voices, are they completely made up or based on existing human speakers?
So we're able to connect to a number of different voice libraries which the customer can choose from. In general, these voices are synthetic in the sense that they are trained based on, one or more real speakers, but it's not something that there's any specific named individual associated with. It's not something that, needs to be separately licensed. It's basically, we and our suppliers, guarantee the usability of the voice. It's also possible through many technologies today to make your own what people will call a voice clone, where essentially you could train a system with, say, it varies. I mean, the more material, the better. But let's say you could train the system with 10 minutes of speaking data, and then it would be able to use the characteristics of your voice that it got from that training, and would be able to use that to say other things. It generally works best if the training data and the data that you want to speak are in the same language, because different languages use different phonetics. And so if you only have training data in English, it might be a little difficult to create a voice that sounds like it's speaking fluent and coherent Swahili. You just might not really sound like a native speaker when you did that. But, a lot of things are possible in this. There's some interesting, more experimental technology that does what's called a zero-shot clone, where you simply where you can really try to emulate the voice almost as you're hearing it based on only a second or two of samples. That's probably more of an up and coming technology than a right now technology, but it's certainly very interesting. So we've seen that customers have a lot of different interests and desires in this space. For the most part, the desire is to use something that is royalty safe and legally safe and simply sounds good. But in some cases, of course, you may be interested in, can I really make this sound like a specific individual speaker? And in that case, that's something that we're working to provide some features with. The user is probably going to have to make sure that they have the appropriate legal advice on some of that. You wouldn't want to be using someone's voice in a context where you were getting commercial benefit out of this and didn't have the proper contextual agreements around that. So just a note of caution that this is something that in many of the conversations we're in, there are concerns about, and I am not a lawyer.
And just to add on to that a little bit, this is what we were talking about, where we're always partnering with the best technologies to package this into a straightforward solution for you guys. So all of this is like things that we're doing research on the back end to make sure that if there's a technology for voice cloning, because people do have the desire to have voice cloning available, that's something that we will be adding as the technology becomes available. Again, most of this is going to be seamless. There's going to be very little change on your end to add any of these things. But as we kind of get more into exploration and figuring out what actually customers want and what customers would like to see on their broadcast, we're going to continue to add that as time goes on. So we're going to continue growing like that too.
Anonymous says, great, thank you. But Anonymous also has two more questions. Let's see, and this one is very important. It's about security. What about security? As it is internet connected, this becomes a bit critical. How about data security and making sure your translation is not used for training and can't be leaking in the public for sensitive corporate data?
100%, and we've been dealing with this issue with subtitles and text translation for many years, so it's not new. We do have a completely on-prem product with no cloud access to the data. That is our LEXI Local product. That is not immediately supporting voice, but does support subtitles and text translations currently. For voice, it probably will support some voice models in the pretty near future. As far as uploading to the cloud, it's something that, I mean, this is on the cloud right now. I think most people's sensitive work is on some cloud pretty much all the time. AI Media is on a journey where by the end of this summer, we are expecting to have a full SOC 2 accreditation for what we do with cloud and AI. I think that's going to, we've had most of these systems in place for quite a few years, but getting the accreditation, I think, is going to help with everyone see the extent to which we take these issues seriously and have the right practices in place and have had an independent audit of those practices. So it's something that I think you're seeing a lot of broadcast vendors begin to pursue, kind of that has come out of the IT world and into the broadcast world as a legitimate concern. We do have agreements with all of the model providers that we use around training of data. That's in the user agreement that you would sign with us. We pass those terms through. For the most part, the data is not used for training, but that's something that you and your legal team can certainly review the user agreements on. I think it's a comprehensive policy, and for the most part, something that, as long as you understand, you probably shouldn't have a lot to worry about on that issue. It's something that we, like every other vendor, is going to need to keep working on, right, to just make sure that we win the user trust and that we continue to stay vigilant about cybersecurity in all its forms.
Perfect. Anonymous has a comment that sort of ages me because I recognize who Anonymous is talking about. Anonymous says, cloning Howard Cosell's voice will not be allowed. Is that true?
Again, I am not a lawyer. I am an engineer. But I mean, if you were using the likeness of a famous person without a legal license to do so, I assume that is not allowed. And, that's not something that is baked into our product in any way. It's something that I think the user of the product, if you're using a product, I mean, our product as of today does not even have a feature for cloning a specific voice, but it is something we've been looking into. I think we are likely to release a product with a feature like that in the not so distant future, but that's still going to be a situation where the user of that product is going to need to make sure that the way they are using the product is appropriately licensed for their use case. If it's talent that is currently employed by you, you may have to make sure that that is a contractually agreed use of the talent's voice. If it's talent that is dead and is not employed by you and that you have no contractual relationship with, I'm sorry if Howard Cosell is not dead. It's maybe before my time, but you probably should not do that. I mean, please seek appropriate legal guidance.
Yes, he was popular a long time ago.
If we're adding these services too, and this is something we've had to consider from a bunch of different standpoints, but if this is something that we're adding, we're going to be very careful and cautious about how it's added. It'll be only an optional feature. It's not like everyone will opt in automatically, or there'll be no training without explicit permission types of things. So that's obviously we are very comfortable and confident with that. But like Bill said, it's not available today. This is just something that would be coming in the future, and you'd be notified before making any changes like that.
Thank you. Now, I don't know if this is the same Anonymous through the whole webcast, but Anonymous
There's a lot of Anonymouses.
Yeah. Anonymous asks, what about pricing? What is the budget range?
Yeah, the pricing is very straightforward. It's $30 per hour per language that you're translating into. So very straightforward. We kept it simple. That's all you need to know.
Very good. And Anonymous says, no, multiple Anonymouses. And Frank asks, or says, our use case is in medical education webinars. How accurate is the translation to comply with accreditation?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I'll take the first crack at that, Bill, and then I'm sure you can give a really good explanation. But basically, what we've been working on is to take a step back on the workflow of this, we're creating caption data first. We're then creating a translation off of that caption data, and then we're reading that translation out, and that's what LEXI Voice is. What we've watched happen in the space of the original source language audio going into captions, that has gotten to a point where we're saying we're over 99% accuracy in a live setting for that. So for medical types of presentations, you'll expect that same level of captions will be at least over 99% accurate. And that's even containing the technical jargon you might expect with a medical conversation. You can always add custom vocabulary to that too. So if you have some that's specific to your environment, you can always add that, and then it will get it right when it puts it out. The second step of that is actually creating the translation based off of the original program captions. That has gotten tremendously better over the years, again, as we add additional technology to what we're doing on our side. So what we've noticed is that partners we've used in the past for translation sometimes tended to be very literal. It would take the word for word translation and put that out to caption text. We've now moved on to new partners that are understanding contextual accuracy much more for the different language pairs that they're going to. So it's going to English to Spanish, it understands that and it knows, okay, I know to translate into this versus the literal for that. Like you wouldn't use certain expressions in Spanish like you would in English. It'll know things like that much more. So when you get into the medical field, it's going to do much, much better in those scenarios. So the accuracy is hard to put an exact number on because it's going to vary on a bunch of different things. But what I will say is that when you have people that are listening to LEXI Voice live, the reaction lately has been, that's extremely good, extremely positive, really overwhelmingly good feedback, especially when we have the newer technologies added on. We've had a couple of demos in the past where it's been using older ones and mixed feedback, but now as we're moving forward, it's gotten so much better that people are very confident. Like you saw the Korean clip, that's using the latest technology. We're very comfortable with that and saying that that's ready for production today. So for medical purposes, it would be completely fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with all of that. I'll say that like there is no really well-established way. I mean, it's an academically complex subject to define the quality of a translation as a number. So it really that's difficult in and of itself. It's also that the question kind of asked about accreditation, and I don't know if there's a well-defined quality standard numerically or otherwise for that subject. So I bring that up because I think that, you know, a lot of people looking at this technology would have a question that is in some ways similar to that. And the best guidance I could probably give is to say, you should probably try it out, and you should probably look at what people's subjective response to this really is, because in the end, a user's subjective response is probably more important than, you know, any given number that you can assign to it, because all of the numerical systems have their own biases, and it can be really questionable whether that number really gets at what's most important to you. And then at the same time, is this, quote, good enough? Is it fit for purpose? That's a question that involves a pretty nuanced look at your purpose, you know. And you know, if I said this was 99.99% accurate, I mean, that would make it an incredible system. If the patient is going to die on the 0.1% error, that might still not be good enough for a certain application. I mean, now mind you, human translation also does not necessarily offer, you know, 6 nines of perfection. So I think it's good to balance, look at really what do we need in this application? How subjectively satisfied are our viewers or our users or our evaluators? And look at those questions, and with the understanding that you're also this technology is an alternative to other methodologies that, you know, also are generally not perfect and may have their own lapses in coverage or in timing or in accuracy. So I think that in the end, usually only someone who's pretty close to your use case is really going to be able to tell you if a technology is, quote, good enough. I do think that this technology, in my experience, has been so good that I would suggest that you try it.
Okay, well, we have pretty much reached the end of our allotted time. Any closing comments?
No, I mean, we're very excited about this launch, and we're, again, we're ready to go with this. This is ready to ship today. So anyone that's wants to give it a try, we're more than happy to work with you immediately to get that set up. But otherwise, yeah, thank you for having us on today, Joel and the SMPTE group. It was great to talk, and look forward to doing more of these.
Thanks so much. Love talking about the product. And if anybody learned something, that's amazing.
I'm sure they did. There's no doubt. Okay, well, thank you very much. I do appreciate you taking time out of your schedules and presenting what looks like a very well put together presentation. I'm sure you will find lots of interest in the product. So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Matt, and take care. And I do have just a final closing comment. I do want to thank our audience because things are busy and there are lots of these webcasts. So for those folks that were able to make it today, thank you, thank you, thank you. And just a personal thought, please cherish the moments you have with your family, your loved ones, and your friends. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.